Catherine II of Russia, known to history as Catherine the Great, stands as one of the most remarkable and transformative rulers in European history. Born Sophie Friederike Auguste von Anhalt-Zerbst-Dornburg, this German princess would become the longest ruling female leader of Russia, fundamentally reshaping the empire's political, social, and cultural landscape during her 34-year reign from 1762 to 1796. Sophie was born on May 2, 1729, in Stettin, Prussia, modern-day Szczecin, Poland, into the minor German nobility. Her father, Christian August, Prince of Anhalt-Zerbst, served as a Prussian general, while her mother, Johanna Elisabeth of Holstein-Gottorp, possessed connections to European royal houses that would prove crucial to Sophie's future. The young princess displayed exceptional intelligence and an insatiable appetite for learning, particularly in languages, literature, and philosophy. Her governess, Babette Cardel, instilled in Sophie the values of the Enlightenment that would later characterize her reign. In 1744, when Sophie was just 14, she received an invitation from Empress Elizabeth of Russia to visit St. Petersburg. Elizabeth needed to secure the succession through her nephew, the future Peter III, who required a suitable bride. Sophie's maternal connections to the Holstein-Gottorp line made her an attractive candidate for this dynastic alliance. Sophie's arrival in Russia marked the beginning of her complete transformation. Demonstrating remarkable adaptability, she immediately learned Russian language and customs, converted to Russian Orthodoxy, and assumed the name Catherine Alexeyevna. Her dedication impressed Empress Elizabeth and distinguished her from other foreign-born court members. In 1745, Catherine married Grand Duke Peter, heir to the Russian throne. The marriage was politically motivated and personally troubled from the beginning. Peter was immature, ill-suited for leadership, and openly contemptuous of Russian customs, preferring his native Holstein culture. During these early years, Catherine devoted herself to education with extraordinary dedication. She read voraciously, studying the works of Enlightenment philosophers including Voltaire, Diderot, and Montesquieu. These intellectual pursuits shaped her political philosophy and prepared her for future responsibilities. Catherine's position at court was precarious. She had to navigate complex politics while maintaining Elizabeth's favor. Her intelligence, charm, and genuine interest in Russian culture gradually won her support among influential courtiers and military officers, relationships that would prove crucial during political crisis. In 1754, Catherine gave birth to a son, Paul, securing the dynasty's future. Despite personal challenges, Catherine continued building her political network and deepening her understanding of Russian governance. Elizabeth's death in January 1762 brought Peter III to the throne, but his reign would prove disastrously brief. Peter's policies alienated virtually every important constituency in Russian society. He withdrew Russia from the 7 Years' War just as the country was positioned to gain significant advantages, essentially gifting Prussia victory. He introduced reforms that threatened the Orthodox Church and attempted to reorganize the military along Prussian lines. Most damaging was Peter's obvious contempt for Russia itself. He made no secret of his preference for Holstein and his intention to transform Russia according to German models. His erratic behavior and treatment of Catherine created scandal and undermined his legitimacy. Catherine cultivated relationships with key military leaders and court officials who were increasingly dissatisfied with Peter's rule. Her lover, Grigory Orlov, was instrumental in organizing support among the Guards regiments. Catherine presented herself as the true defender of Russian interests. The crisis came in July 1762. On July 9th, while Peter was away from the capital, Catherine launched her coup. With the support of the Guards regiments and key nobles, she proclaimed herself Empress of all Russia. The coup was swift and bloodless. Peter abdicated without resistance and died within days under suspicious circumstances. At age 33, Catherine had achieved absolute power. Catherine's early years as empress were marked by ambitious attempts to implement Enlightenment principles in Russian governance. She was determined to be remembered as an enlightened ruler who modernized Russia and improved the lives of her subjects. Her approach combined genuine philosophical conviction with shrewd political calculation. One of Catherine's first major initiatives was the creation of the nakaz, instruction, in 1767, a comprehensive legal code based on Enlightenment principles. Drawing heavily from Montesquieu's Spirit of the Laws and Beccaria's writings on criminal justice, the nakaz called for legal equality, protection of private property, and humane treatment of criminals. While never fully implemented, it demonstrated Catherine's intellectual ambitions and commitment to reform. Catherine convened a legislative commission in 1767 to discuss and implement these reforms. The commission included representatives from various social estates and ethnic groups across the empire, reflecting her attempt to create more inclusive governance. Though the commission was dissolved in 1768 due to the outbreak of war with Turkey, it provided Catherine with valuable insights into the empire's diverse needs and challenges. Education was another priority for Catherine, who established Russia's first state schools for girls and founded the Free Economic Society to promote agricultural and industrial development. She also reorganized provincial administration, creating a more efficient and centralized system of governance that would persist well into the 19th century. However, Catherine's enlightened ideals confronted the harsh realities of Russian society, particularly the institution of serfdom. Despite her philosophical opposition to slavery, she found herself unable and ultimately unwilling to challenge serfdom directly. Economic necessity, noble opposition, and fear of social upheaval led her to strengthen rather than weaken the bonds of serfdom during her reign. Catherine's reign was marked by spectacular military successes that expanded Russian territory and established the empire as a major European power. Her most significant achievements came in wars against the Ottoman Empire and in the colonization of newly acquired territories. The First Russo-Turkish War, 1768–1774, resulted in decisive Russian victory and the Treaty of Küçük Kaynarca, which granted Russia access to the Black Sea and established Russian protection over Orthodox Christians in the Ottoman Empire. This treaty marked the beginning of Russia's emergence as a Black Sea power and set the stage for further expansion southward. Catherine's conquest and annexation of Crimea in 1783 was a masterstroke of both military strategy and diplomatic maneuvering. The annexation eliminated a persistent security threat and provided Russia with a crucial foothold on the Black Sea. Catherine personally visited Crimea in 1787, a journey that became legendary for its elaborate staging by her minister Grigory Potemkin. The Second Russo-Turkish War, 1787–1792, further solidified Russian dominance in the Black Sea region. Under the brilliant military leadership of generals like Alexander Suvorov and admirals like Fyodor Ushakov, Russian forces achieved remarkable victories. The Treaty of Jassy, 1792, confirmed Russian control over the northern Black Sea coast and established the Dniester River as the border with the Ottoman Empire. Catherine also participated in the partitions of Poland, 1772, 1793, 1795, which eliminated Poland as an independent state and brought substantial territories under Russian control. While these partitions secured Russia's western borders and added millions of new subjects, they also created long-term challenges in governing diverse populations with different religions and cultures. By the end of Catherine's reign, she had expanded Russian territory by approximately 200,000 square miles, adding regions that would become crucial to the empire's future development. The acquisition of warm-water ports and fertile agricultural lands transformed Russia's economic potential and strategic position. The greatest internal challenge to Catherine's rule came in the form of Pugachev's rebellion, a massive peasant uprising that swept across southeastern Russia from 1773 to 1775, led by Yemelyan Pugachev, Melyan, a Cossack who claimed to be the murdered Peter III. The rebellion attracted serfs, Cossacks, religious minorities, and other disaffected groups. The rebellion revealed the depth of social tensions within Russian society and the limitations of Catherine's enlightened policies. Pugachev promised to abolish serfdom, eliminate taxation, and restore traditional Cossack freedoms. His movement gained enormous popular support, at one point controlling territory larger than France. Catherine initially underestimated the rebellion's seriousness, but as Pugachev's forces approached Moscow and threatened major cities, she was forced to deploy substantial military resources. The rebellion was finally crushed in 1775, and Pugachev was executed in Moscow. However, the uprising had profound effects on Catherine's policies and worldview. The rebellion convinced Catherine that rapid social reform was too dangerous, and that the existing social order, despite its injustices, was necessary for stability. She abandoned many of her earlier liberalizing tendencies and instead focused on strengthening the state's control over society. The Charter to the Nobility, 1785, granted extensive privileges to the noble class, essentially creating a partnership between the autocracy and the nobility based on shared interests in maintaining social control. Catherine's reign marked a golden age of Russian culture and intellectual development. She was a prolific correspondent with leading Enlightenment figures, including Voltaire and Diderot, and her court became a center of European culture. Her personal library contained over 40,000 books, reflecting her commitment to intellectual pursuits. Under Catherine's patronage, Russian literature and arts flourished. She founded the Hermitage Collection, which began as her private art collection and evolved into one of the world's great museums. She supported writers, artists, and scholars, and herself wrote plays and essays demonstrating considerable literary talent. Catherine promoted religious tolerance unprecedented in Russian history. While maintaining Orthodox Christianity as the state religion, she generally allowed other faiths to practice freely and invited foreign colonists of various religions to settle in Russia. The Empress introduced European architectural styles to Russia, commissioning magnificent palaces and public buildings that transformed St. Petersburg. The Winter Palace, Catherine Palace, and other monuments from her reign continue to define Russia's imperial heritage. Catherine's personal life was as remarkable as her public achievements. Her romantic relationships, particularly with Grigory Orlov and later Grigory Potemkin, were integral to her political success, providing both personal companionship and crucial political alliances. Potemkin became Catherine's most important collaborator, serving as her lover, advisor, and possibly secret husband. His role in developing southern Russia and managing foreign policy was enormous, and their partnership represented one of the most successful political collaborations in Russian history. Catherine also took personal responsibility for educating her grandsons, the future emperors Alexander I and Nicholas I, with lasting effects on Russian history. Catherine's final years were shadowed by the French Revolution, which fundamentally challenged her Enlightenment beliefs and forced her to reconsider the relationship between reform and stability. Initially sympathetic to revolutionary ideals, she became increasingly conservative as the revolution turned violent and radical. The execution of Louis XVI in 1793 horrified Catherine and led her to break relations with France. She began to see the revolution as a threat to all legitimate authority and joined European coalitions aimed at containing revolutionary influence. This shift reflected her growing belief that reform must come from above and proceed gradually to avoid social chaos. Despite advancing age, Catherine remained actively involved in governance until her final days. She continued to work on legal reforms, educational initiatives, and territorial administration. Her energy and intellectual curiosity never diminished, and she maintained an extensive correspondence with European intellectuals and political leaders. On November 17, 1796, Catherine suffered a stroke and died at the age of 67. She had ruled Russia for 34 years, transforming it from a relatively backward European power into a major empire with significant cultural, military, and territorial achievements. Catherine the Great's legacy is complex and often contradictory. She was simultaneously an enlightened philosopher and an absolute autocrat, a liberator of ideas and a strengthener of serfdom, a promoter of religious tolerance and a defender of social hierarchy. These contradictions reflect both the limitations of Enlightenment thinking when applied to practical governance and the specific challenges of ruling 18th century Russia. Catherine's most enduring achievements include the territorial expansion that established Russia as a major European power, the cultural development that integrated Russia into European intellectual life, and the administrative reforms that created more efficient governance. Her legal and educational initiatives, while often incomplete, established principles that influenced Russian development for generations. However, her failure to address serfdom and her strengthening of noble privileges created social problems that would plague Russia for the next century. The contradiction between her enlightened ideals and the realities of Russian society highlights the limitations of reform from above and the challenges of modernizing a traditional society. Catherine the Great died as one of the most powerful and accomplished rulers of her age, having transformed Russia into a major European empire while establishing a cultural and intellectual legacy that endured long after her death. Her reign marked the culmination of Russia's emergence as a great power and set the stage for the empire's 19th century dominance in European affairs. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, comment, and subscribe to the channel for more engaging historical content.